Well, it is actually a great pleasure for me to recommend this book to you and to help to launch this book, because this is a book which I think everybody needs to read. It's something that is unavoidable. If I told you that no matter what you did, that sometime in the next 2 years you were going to be travelling to, I don't know, Vietnam, there's a pretty good chance that you would read up about Vietnam and find out as much as you could before you went there, because no matter what you did, you're going to go there. Well, I think this is one of those sort of books that helps us with something which is unavoidable. There's not a single person in this room who's going to get through life without having to face grief. I hate to be the bearer of good news, but so what are you going to do about it when that happens? Well, one of the things you can do is avoid it and not think about it. And that's about the worst thing you could possibly do. I think this book, the power of this book is that Gail has made herself extremely vulnerable in it. She has told the story in a very raw way. I cried twice while I was reading this, and I'm not a crier, okay, people who know me, and so you got to me. But the reason that this book for me was really powerful is there's two things about this book. One is that it's vulnerable. I don't know if anyone's seen that YouTube clip by Ben Brown called The Power of Vulnerability. Recommend that to you. But the best ideas that you'll ever have are the times when life is sometimes the very worst. And it's sometimes when you're in those places between it seems like hell and the deep blue sea, is when you find out things about your life and about the meaning of life that you can't discover anywhere else. And I think that this book helps in a very practical way. It shows you how you can face the dark night of the soul, the unavoidable dark night of the soul. I mean, we live in a very fraught, broken world, and every single person in this room is going to die, and everyone you love is going to die, and that's, again, I don't like to have to even mention it, well, let's have a happy little book launch, shall we? But it's in those moments that you discover depth and meaning and truth. And what Gail has done in this book is shown you some of the things that she's learned, and she's put it in such a practical way that even if you haven't had to face anything like that yet, it will prepare you for when that does happen in your life. And right in the introduction it says here, grief comes in many forms, at any time and often when we least expect it. It launches us into the vertical learning curve at a time when we don't want to learn. And we may not want to learn, but as C.S. Lewis says, that pain teaches you. And even though you don't want to learn from pain, you learn. And I believe that we can prepare ourselves in a way which is helpful and meaningful and full of pathos. And I'm sure that if you read this book, you will cry. But it will prepare you for the worst possibility. And once you know that the worst can be lived through, and I believe that Gail and Ron are proof that the worst of times can be lived through, it gives you hope, and it gives you the sense that you're not alone. I remember one great author once said, the reason we read is to know we're not alone. And I believe that no matter how alone you might feel in grief, and I'm doubtless many of you in this room have been in that place, when you read this book you realise you're not alone, someone else knows what that feels like, and has given you some practical tips and very straightforward ways of understanding how to live through grief, how to let grief be not the end of things, but the beginning of something new. And I remember once talking to a woman whose husband was tragically killed, and she refused to accept that her husband was dead, and she just couldn't face it. And it was almost like she was travelling along a road, and then the road took a right-hand turn, but she just kept travelling straight ahead, and she just couldn't face it. And I believe that if she had been able to read this book, if she'd been able to talk with Gail or Ron, then maybe she would have been able to negotiate that turn. And it's a hard turn when you least expect it, like it says in the introduction. When you least expect it, you have to face the right-hand turn. And this is a book that will help you to negotiate that turn. And I cannot recommend it to you too highly, not only for you, but I believe it's the kind of book that is not only good for you, but it's good when someone else close to you is going through a similar kind of a thing. It'll help you to know how to talk with someone who's going through grief and how to handle your own grief. So congratulations, Gail. You've done a great thing here. No, it's not just a book. You've done us a service, and so thank you. Let's give her a big clap.